liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom.
You're tapped in, so let's get right to it because this is big. And I mean bigger than big. This is monstrous, okay? And we're talking about China, all right? Now, we're in a country where most of us think, especially our politicians, that we're the baddest of the bad, the biggest of the big. No one is more mightier, more devastating when it comes to military. That's until someone comes along who is mightier and bigger than your military, who are more capable than the military you support or advocate. That's China. That's China, okay? So politicians are afraid because they're learning, they've been in this ignorant state that, this is the United States. There's no one better, throughout history, through the world, we are the ones, right? They're finding out that China are actually the ones. And they're hearing this from their own military. This is what's spooking them. So, they have in front of the arms committee, these generals, they're coming before, these committees, and they're telling them, the generals are telling the politicians, hey, you guys got it all wrong. You think we got Iran wrong. We're talking about China. And China would be 100 times more forceful, powerful, and devastating than Iran. So these guys are letting these guys know what's going on. And I have a clip. I want to bring this in for a little more context. Before I do, please like, share, follow, comment, and subscribe to TAP, the Art of Political Discourse. We appreciate everyone's participation and viewership. Thank you. And we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Okay, that being said, let's get to this because, again, this is big. This is huge. All right. I have a clip. I want to bring this clip in. This is courtesy of Times of India. Let's go. This is great.
The speed at their production capability is one of the reasons why I'm grateful for the full team's partnership on speeding up the U.S. defense industrial base efforts, as well as the national industrial base efforts. And I'd really like to thank
right quick, so that to add to the context of what's being said, the United States already spends 1.5 trillion on the military. This is what the Pentagon gets, 1.5 trillion, the most money spent anywhere around the world for military or on the military. And they're asking for an additional 500 billion, which would bring that cost up to 200 billion, $2 trillion for the Pentagon and for, America's military. All right. The military industrial complex, they're spending $2 trillion. All right. That's a lot of money. And, that money could be better spent in society for the people, for the citizens of the country. But you can kind of understand their fear. That someone is actually doing way more than they are militarily speaking. All right. So this is what this is. And, this guy here he's letting them know, the politicians, that, hey, man, we're far behind.
Those mom and pop machine shops and second, third, fourth tier suppliers that live in all of your districts who are also increasing speed and capability without losing quality across the entirety of our manufacturing system. And it's going to require all of that. When we look at the range of capabilities.
To me, this sounds like a plea of desperation, to politicians to hurry up and give us more money because we're going to need it. No doubt, it should be no doubt in anyone's mind as to what America's objectives are. And it is to continue hegemony throughout the world. And at some point, there's going to be a confrontation between China and the United States, probably before the United States and Russia, for sure. This sounds like a plea of desperation. Hey, we need to get this thing up and running because we are so far behind the eight ball that is scary. That's the message I'm getting from this guy.
That we must have to be properly armed and globally integrated. That extends to things like, long range fires and really an ability to arm our joint force to win from the seabed to cislunar space in every single domain in there. And I'll defer to the comptroller and to the secretary to talk about the particular elements, but the goal is the range and mix of capabilities that creates outsized dilemmas for Xi Jinping and others that are out there to ensure that we maintain and sustain deterrence. Thank you.
Now, listen, again, I can't say this enough. This is huge to hear them say this, that they are so far behind production and capacity, than China. All right. China's total industrial and military production capacity significantly exceeds that of the United States as of 2026. Okay. While the U.S. maintains a higher overall defense budget, again, they spend a lot of money. The Pentagon receives 1.5 trillion, annually. This is the money they get, and they're asking for an additional 500 billion. So that would make it $2 trillion just for the Pentagon and for the military. All right. But while the U.S. maintains a higher overall defense budget and technological edge in specific areas, China dominates in manufacturing volume and surge capacity. All right. Particularly in shipbuilding and munitions. All right. Industrial production comparison, China currently accounts for nearly 25% of global output in advanced industries. All right. By 2026, experts estimate the U.S. would need a one-time investment of 1.5 trillion in industrial production just to match China's current intensity. However, I have to throw in there the fact that, okay, while you're doing that, what do you think China's doing? And then you publicize what your goals are, and you say outright, hey, China's the problem. We have to prepare for China. And China's sitting there like, oh, we're not worried. No. China said, oh, okay. You want to increase productivity? We will too. They have the manpower. China actually invests heavily in its people, so that the people invest heavily in productivity, in production. It's what they do. It's what they do. But in terms of sector dominance, shipbuilding, for instance, China's shipbuilding capacity is estimated to be roughly 230 times larger than that of the U.S. A single Chinese shipyard often possesses more capacity than all U.S. naval shipyards combined. So you can understand the fear, not just in military personnel, these generals, they're sounding the alarm. But now politicians are saying, oh, shit, oh, there's no doubt they're going to get that 500 billion to add on to that 1.5. They're going to get every dime of that, right? To no avail, though. It's my opinion, but to no avail. They'll get it, but what advances will they make? Thinking, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to ramp up, productivity. What, in China is going to just sit idly by? No, they're going to continue. 230 times larger in terms of shipbuilding, man. These people are doing the dang thing, all right? Now, they have advanced technologies. China leads in 7 of the 10 strategic sectors identified by Hamilton Index, including basic metals, machinery, and electrical equipment. Robots and AI. China utilizes robotics in manufacturing at a scale 12 times greater than the U.S. and leads in the physical application of AI in infrastructure. All right? They lead in the physical application of AI in infrastructure. Have you guys seen these robots they have? Have you guys seen these robots they have? There's no doubt in my mind that China has a robotic corps, Army Corps, Marine, whatever, fully functional. They have integrated this into their systems, into their military. America's so far behind. I can see again why there's panic. Why there's panic in the U.S. military. China's not playing. Military production capacity. China's defense industrial base is frequently described as operating on a wartime footing. So while America goes and mess with Iran and Iran keeps them occupied, America's wasting bombs and munitions on Iran. China's steady building and growing. They're filling capacity. You want to talk about the things Iran has. Iran was laying in wait. And they're nowhere near China in terms of military ability or capacity. And America's having a hard time. The greatest military on the face of the earth are being stymied by Iran. Who doesn't have a Navy? Who doesn't have an Air Force? All right? This is crazy stuff right here. China is on a wartime footing, whereas the U.S. operates on a peacetime footing. Munitions and equipment. Chinese state-owned enterprises produce munitions and high-end weapons systems 5 to 6 times faster than their U.S. counterparts. Naval fleet. China maintains the world's largest navy by ship count, approximately 370 plus warships, and continue to outpace the U.S. in new hull production. Missiles. You think Iran had missiles. The PLA rocket force arsenal grew by nearly 50% over 4 years to roughly 3,500 missiles by 2024, with production rates continuing to accelerate through 2026. Strategic U.S. advantages. Despite China's production lead, the U.S. retains critical strategic advantages. Global reach, 750 overseas bases across 80 countries compared to China's limited overseas presence. Air power, the U.S. operates over 13,000 aircraft, roughly triple China's manned aircraft fleet. Nuclear and tech, a qualitative lead in nuclear powered aircraft carriers, 11 versus 3 conventional for China. Stealth bombers and frontier AI research. If you look at this stuff I'm looking at, you'd be like, hey, this is a problem for the U.S., especially when we know that the United States has they're concerned with hegemony, power, and dominance, the world over, and that, it looks good. It sounds good, especially when you fight countries who aren't on your level. But when you come up against superpowers or another superpower, that fight is going to be everything you didn't describe or you could not have imagined, if it happens. So America, I can understand them scrabbling and being in a panic. Let's get back to this.
You're using AI every day, but you're leaving 80% of it on the table. Here's the fix. Next time you...
My concern is that we're not just competing against China's military capability. We're competing against the speed at which China can build, replace, and influence. Where are some capability gaps when it comes to a potential conflict with the PRC? And General Kane, how will your priorities posture the joint force to close those gaps?
Chairman, thanks for the question. The speed at their production capability is one of the reasons why I'm grateful for the full team's partnership on speeding up the U.S. defense industrial base efforts, as well as the national industrial base efforts. And I'd really like to thank those mom and pop machine shops and second, third, fourth tier suppliers that live in all of your districts who are also increasing speed and capability without losing quality across the entirety of our manufacturing system. And it's going to require all of that. When we look at the range of capabilities that we must have to be properly armed and globally integrated. That extends to things like, long range fires and really an ability to arm our joint force to win from the seabed to cislunar space in every single domain in there. And I'll defer to the comptroller and to the secretary to talk about the particular elements, but the goal is the range and mix of capabilities that create outsized dilemmas for Xi Jinping and others that are out there to ensure that we maintain and sustain deterrence. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. Second, the war between the U.S. and Iran reinforces an old lesson, which is that modern conflict comes down to attrition. China has been able to produce naval ships at a pace our industrial base can't match. The ships are not as large as ours, but quantity has a quality of its own. How are we postured for an economy of force in the Pacific, particularly if Taiwan is invaded?
Well, sir, channeling my inner Clausewitz, which is always something I try to remember, the big moving parts of warfighting. We're not really doing economy of force work in the Pacific, as you alluded to, sir, and others have. It's our primary focus, and so on a daily basis, we come to the secretary with a range of military options across the world. So that he and the president can carefully consider those military actions and associated risks. It all comes back to the budgetary tools that you'll hopefully give us and the authorities to achieve those capabilities. And
that's that $500 billion more they're asking for budget spending for the Pentagon. No doubt about that.
As we look, for example, at shipbuilding, which you talked about, I'm grateful for the work that the Navy is doing to scale that effort to ensure that we offer and continue to offer those range of options to our civilian leaders here in the United States.
Quickly to Epic Fury. Our fight with Iran has confirmed what defense planners had long warned about. Iran doesn't need a peer military to cause serious problems. Its playbook, the cheap drones built from commercial parts, sea mines in contested straits, fast attack craft, and anti-ship missiles. The war also confirmed a harder lesson. Even with overwhelming firepower, the side that runs out of munitions or air defenses first loses. Are we, Mr. Secretary, are we secure in that?
And I think that's part of the worry, the stress for the military, the U.S. military, the fact that they've used a whole lot of munitions in this war with Iran, so much so that the levels that they have depleted drastically. They thought that going into Iran would be a cakewalk. They were told by Benjamin Netanyahu that this would be easy. It would be over quick. They didn't anticipate that they'd be going 3 months into this conflict, this war with Iran, thinking, underestimating Iran's capability to sustain against a superpower like the United States and still, be, in a position to, defend itself in spite of the military might of the United States. So these weapons are being used for what? They're not accomplishing anything. It has not, or they have not defeated the Iranian IRGC or the government. It just hasn't happened. Now, how are you guys going to replace all these munitions, and how soon can they be replaced? So, I think the thought is, okay, what if something breaks out with China next week? They'll be in the war to hurt, And so I get it. I get it. I get the panic there.
Point.
Absolutely.
They have this guy. This guy, Headseth, is a real idiot.
We are winning, have won every component of what we fought in this conflict. Iran knows that based on the incredible degradation of their.
I don't know how he fixes his mouth to say that Iran has realized they lost. And, you know, there hasn't been one American boot set on Iranian soil or Kurg Island or any of that. You know, you come on. You can't tell Iran they've lost this war. And they control the Strait of Hormuz. That doesn't look like, you know, a loss to me.
Their capabilities, and which is why we saw them wanting to come to the table. How this gets resolved will be on our terms, on President Trump's terms, and we have all the munitions and capabilities necessary to enable that.
Thank you. You'll bet.
And that, I think, is also a lie he just told, because Iran has said, and they seem to admit what they've said, that this thing will end on their terms. So you got both sides saying that, all right? It seems that Donald Trump is doing more blinking than Iran is, for whatever reason. We think, though, that this thing is going to start up again. And the only way that the United States can actually claim a victory is if, you know, they just, you got to level the whole place. And that's not going to stop them. Then you have to go in to Iran and just, that's the only way. You dropping bombs and shooting missiles, that's not going to stop them. It hasn't stopped them in 3 months. So.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. Mr. Hurst, on April 29th, as you indicated to the ranking member, you said that the Iran war had cost $25 billion in total. You reaffirmed that today. Do you have any other updated costs or projections since that testimony that you've given? Outside reporting estimates have indicated that the war costs could be $1 billion a day. Do you have anything to share?
$1 billion a day. They've been at this now for what? Since February 28th. All right. We're halfway through the month of May, more than halfway. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. It's way more than 25 billion. It has to be.
Yeah, thanks for the question, sir. So at the time of testimony in front of the House, it was $25 billion. But the Joint Staff team and the Comptroller team are constantly looking at that estimate. And so now we think it's closer to 29. That's because of updated repair and replacement of equipment costs, and also just general operational costs to keep people in theater.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Secretary, when can you share more formal accounting on the cost of the war with Congress and with this committee?
We'll share what we can. I think we've updated on that number this morning, but when it's relevant and required, we will share it.
I think this would be the format that it would be required. Mr. Secretary, on that same day, April 29th, you testified that the current ceasefire meant that the 60-day calendar with the War Powers Resolution was paused. Who are the parties to the ceasefire?
Well, right now, we are in that same ceasefire as of right now.
That wasn't the question. Who are the parties to
It will
the
be the United States and the regime in Iran.
How many pages is the ceasefire? What deal points? I'm not asking you to share the contents. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how do we know that the ceasefire is active or not active without any documentation?
Well, we all know that the ceasefire is not really a ceasefire. There's still, you know, hostilities taking place. Iran hasn't agreed to the ceasefire. Well, the question was asked, who's all parties to the ceasefire? The United States and Iran is what Headseth implied. However, they're still shooting shots at each other, you know, in the Strait of Hormuz, or, you know, from where they are, the United States Navy in the Persian Gulf, or, you know, this, what they label as a ceasefire is just a downgrade of the war. A ceasefire is a ceasefire. No more rockets and missiles being shot or drones, but this is taking place. Just last week there was a flare up in regards to the ceasefire, and we thought then here at TAP that it would start right then and there again. This thing that they're promoting as a victory or whatnot, I don't understand how you could claim a victory and you're saying now you're in a ceasefire. Not only that, but Iran's not agreeing to any of that because Iran continues to blow up assets, military U.S. assets in neighboring region or neighboring states, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain. Iran isn't looking at a ceasefire. Iran has continued to do what they've continued to do, and that is fight off, the United States or their proxies, in this war against them. So I don't know about a ceasefire, but what I do know is if this is the best they can do with Iran, they will be in a world of hurt if that was China, or if they come up against China, let's say over Taiwan. Xi Jinping just warned Donald Trump last week, don't interfere with our business with Taiwan. If you do, there will be a conflict. And I don't think for a minute Trump think he's bluffing, that whole situation was just something to see. China's not to be messed with. China is totally different than Iran, but by all means, in any stretch of the imagination. But China is something that the United States have to catch up to if they want to retain this title of the most dominant military on the face of the planet. It doesn't look like that from where I'm standing, and especially in terms of what I've been reading. America's hurting. America's hurting. And, there's a conversation going about that America is in its death throes, is in a downward spiral. The dominance of America, not just militarily, but, politically, financially, globally, is waning. It's slipping through their fingers. And for a lot, it's a sight to see. It's such a pleasure for a lot of people. That being said, let's see what China does. And tell me, let us know what you think. Is China to be played with? Is this issue big enough for the United States to finally say, hey, you know what? We've been slipping. We have a lot to do. China's presence as a world power, does it change the paradigm, or does it change the outlook that the United States of America is the most dominant and feared country on the face of the earth? Let us know. Put your thoughts in the comments, and we appreciate that. We'll read them and answer everything there. So until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.
You can murder a liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder a revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom.